Hey everybody, welcome to Ad Victoriam. I'm Caleb, this is Zac,
Hey guys.
and we are reading, praying, journaling, and talking through the Bible to victory. Zac is going to get us started off today.
Yeah, I was reading in Mark, and I'll just say, if you notice on YouTube, the huge study Bible here, study Bibles are awesome. I probably haven't actually used one since college, and so then I picked up a new one this last year, and it's been awesome. Just because they make all the connections of you're like, oh, somewhere in the Bible when Jesus references an old a prophecy or
Psalm, or
something, a psalm, and then it says, yes, it's referenced here, and this is what he's talking about. And so I was reading in Mark, and immediately it's John the Baptist, and he's talking, all of his prophetic things that he's talking about. And so then it led me to read in Jeremiah 31, where it's one of the prophets talking about Jesus' return in the new covenant. And so from there, I read one line in chapter 31, verse 32. Jesus or God is talking about how he's going to bring the new covenant, and he's talking about the old covenant. And he says, they broke that covenant, though I loved them as a husband loves a wife. And I was just thinking about that, how a lot of times God talks about when his people betray him, leave, worship other idols. He talks about it not in a they're, worshiping other idols. He talks about it in a very way of like betrayal, cheating on him, adultery, and use the word like whoring a lot. And I'm just like, those are such aggressive terms. Like, excuse me. Like, I've felt betrayed before, but I've never been cheated on. And so I'm like, why is it such an intense description? So I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, God sees into the whole person. And if God sees into a whole person, that is only something that takes us people a lifetime to do in a relationship such as marriage, to get to the point where you say, I can fully understand and know somebody. Even as much as you know somebody, still, like growing up with someone, there's still things you don't know. Like, your parents, but you don't know, like, know your parents. Or people that are married. Like, I've been married for a couple years, and I still, like, I know Tori, and I know her, in that sense of like, I know, just we talk all the time, and I know all these things that she does and doesn't do, and likes and doesn't like, and how she thinks about things. But there's still more to know that it'll take a lifetime before I can say, like, I understand 100%. So that to say, if the Lord does sees everything that you are, does he get to that point that a lifelong marriage level of intimacy and knowing someone gets to immediately? Is he at that point, like, right away? So then that made me think, if he can see and know us 100%, that means that when we do turn away from him, it must feel like someone who's been married for 20, 30, 40 years, all that life that you've gone through together, the depth at which you know someone, and then they double cross you, turn away, cheat on you. And I was like, oh, I think I understand why he uses that language now, because if he sees, once again, if he sees you 100%, that means he is at that really deep emotional connection, intimate connection that we rarely experience those relationships, only a handful in a lifetime, in my opinion. And so when your good friend from, high school, from middle school, does something that betrays you, that hurts way more than if it was someone you just met and you're like, oh, that sucks. That wasn't cool, but whatever. So it's like, okay, what if it's 10 times deeper than that we could ever, more than we could ever understand, because he's God and he sees you at a different level, understands where, his plans and dreams for your life. And then when you backtrack from that, it's like, oh, how much, I don't know. That's what I was thinking about in reading. It was like, just when he says like a husband loves a wife, that got me kind of going down that track, thinking about all that stuff. So that's just what I journaled, is just brainstorming and journaling on that idea of the depth at which, I don't know, the Lord sees us and knows us, and why that hurts so much when we push him away, I guess. Thoughts on that? Hit you with another big topic.
Yeah. Obviously throughout the entire Bible, our relationship with God is that of marriage, because marriage is a reflection of our relationship with God. That is the original marriage, is between us and God, and, or I should say, his children and him, being the children of Israel, or uh, everybody that he has created has turned away from him in some way, shape, or fashion, obviously, because we've all sinned. It's interesting thinking about it in how you're coming from it from like an emotional way, because I don't know, I've never thought about it in that way, of the idea that we can hurt God emotionally. I just don't know where I fall on that, because obviously we know that he's pained and he's brokenhearted and he gets angry and he loves us and all of those things. Um but yeah, that's just it. It's just I don't have any like particular thought out thoughts of, or process thoughts of, I've never really thought about it in that way, I guess, of, because I've yet to be married, um, of what that means when we break that covenant with God, and if it's us actually hurting him emotionally, or if it's something that when he looks at us, it's like, you should know better, and that's why it frustrates me so much. I guess that's where my mind immediately went to when you were talking about that, of like, do we hurt God? And I guess I don't. Is that possible to hurt God? Is he capable of being hurt emotionally? Um, Obviously, we see him like moved with compassion and grow indignant in like Jesus, like as the man. Anyways, that's what I was thinking about, or like those are the questions. I don't have answers to those questions, but that's just what I was thinking about. Is that how he is relaying that message to us? Because there's part of me that's kind of uncomfortable with him using the prophets and Jesus to be like, you hurt me, and that's why I'm upset right now. I feel like that's, I don't know, like that feels like the like whiny boyfriend of like, and I don't know, it's just really hard for me to wrap my head around if that is God's intention of like when he speaks that, or if there's another way that he's talking about and saying like, hey, I deserve your love and your hearts and your lives, and you've rejected me. And I don't know, yeah, I guess, does God feel pain? That's the question I have right now.
It's a good
And
question.
if he does, like, what is that like? And would we ever know what that's like? Because obviously, like, our relationships, like you were just talking about, it's like we can say it's like this, but then that's also two humans that are imperfect and that aren't God. And like, what is our relationship with God? And like, when we fail, when we do sin, what is the effect that has on him, if any? And I know that was like completely besides the point, but that's like, it's alongside the point that you were making, I guess, of, I don't know. That's just what it got me thinking of, is like, are we capable of hurting God emotionally, or is he using terms that we can understand to liken it to something that we've experienced in order to show like the depth and the gravity of our sin and our idolatry and all of that? So I don't know. I don't know. That's how I'm gonna throw it back to you. Is what I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I think at the level that I don't think is debatable is it's his showing his commitment to his people.
That's
And
good.
because that's what he goes on later in that, is he says, I am just as likely to reject my people of Israel as I am to abolish the laws of nature, saying he's like, I'm not going to reject you. I'd just as soon just let the world go to complete chaos and everything blow up and whatever. And he says later, just as the heavens cannot be measured and the foundations of the earth cannot be explored, so I will not consider casting them away. So obviously that at the main point is his commitment to his people. And then that's what got me thinking further of like, but why a husband and a wife? And I think, excuse me, I think that's where, yeah, and I don't know. And maybe, I mean, Hosea obviously is like the whole depiction of the wife leaving, and he just is like, I'm committed to this. And, but yeah, can we emotionally hurt God? I don't know. That's so interesting. Because obviously there's like some emotional back and forth when I think of, is it Abraham and Lot, and he's like, I'm gonna destroy them all. And he's like, what if there's like one good person there? Specifically thinking of Lot. And so I think that's there's like a back and forth there of, it's a little bit of an emotional exchange of God wants to just destroy them, but I don't know, that I need to read again to give a more accurate understanding of that. But um
I do like the idea of it more framed through commitment than emotion, because I think that is like God is truth. That is something I can completely and totally ascribe to him as something that is who he is, right? And when we enter into that covenant with him, that is our word saying we will do what we said we are going to do. And I don't know. Now I'm thinking back to like Moses leading the children of Israel out of the wilderness, that when they get the law, then God, like, before they enter the promised land, he puts them like on two mountainsides, and they say like, we will do this and we won't do this, and we will do this and we won't do this. And then that's like their entering into that covenant by the law with God. And then you see like Abraham like enters into that covenant like through blood with God. And as we see like here in Jeremiah, God is basically saying it's literally impossible for me to go against my word, because it's impossible for me to go against like who I am. And maybe this is, now that I'm processing it a little more, maybe this is also him saying like, you said this is who you are going to be, but this is how you are acting. You are acting like the adulterous woman. You are acting like the prostitute. And when you go after idols, when you disobey me, when you rebel against me, this is the example that I'm going to use, because you. Okay, so yeah, marriage is a covenant between a man and a woman before God and before man, and then you are expected to uphold that covenant. And when you don't, you are then labeled as an adulterer or a deadbeat, or all of these things that society deems not so much anymore. But like that's what, like, I think the reflection of the covenant between man and woman is with God. And okay, so then I'll take the next step of the emotional thing is, yes, there are emotions, I think, when it comes to adultery, but that isn't the main grievance. Like, it's not because you hurt me, it's because yes, you hurt me, but that was a result of you going back on what you said, on what the truth is. Like, that is the first, that's like the root, and then like the emotions are the tree of that. And so, yeah, maybe I guess I would feel more comfortable, I guess, in saying like that's what God is upset about, is not that that we wounded him, but that we lied.
I like that understanding of it. Because that makes more sense too, of when, like, because the new covenant isn't just a like, we're just gonna try again, or or something like that. It's literally just an an improvement on it based on the people's inability to uphold that. So he's just saying, let's change around how we do this, not necessarily because it's still like, he's still God. We still honor, everything that was put in the law is just transcribed in a new way. And that's where he says, in here, I'll put my instructions deep within them, write it on their hearts. I'll be their God and they will be my people, which is like, he says that over. That's what he said. I'll be their God and they'll be my people at the beginning of the whole covenant and everything. Even to Abraham, he's like, I'll be your God and you'll be your people. You'll be my people. So yeah, I kind of like that. And I think, yeah, maybe the upsetness, I guess, is, yeah, I like that idea where it's like, because they lied and didn't uphold that. And I also think it's because God also has plans and has like, he wants to have all these blessings poured out, and he's just like, I can't pour out blessings if you're not obeying me. That's just not how it works. And um
Can I add one more thought? I think also he has those plans. He also loves us so much, which is exactly what you're saying at the beginning. He knows us, therefore he loves us. He obviously created us. And I think just like when we love people and we see them uh self-destruct, it's painful in a way, but I think the difference is that like when we sin or worship idols, like we're not taking necessarily anything away from God, like from who God is. yes, we are denying him our relationship with him, but he's also already defined that relationship and said like when he says like I won't push Israel away. But it's like, okay, we see throughout the entire Old Testament, it's like, it seems like he pushes them away, but it's not him negating the covenant that he originally made with them, because in that covenant, he said, if you abandon me, these are the consequences: exile, death, famine, plague, like all of that stuff. And so it's still God keeping to his word. But, anyways, that's where, yeah, I was like, he loves us and he also sees us destroying ourselves, and I think that does pain him for our sake, but it doesn't necessarily wound him in that it's like I just don't think God can be wounded emotionally, physically, spiritually, like any of that stuff. I think that's where I was getting kind of like tripped up on, like, again, it's just putting it in my own humanness where I can't understand God, but it's like I've been cheated on before, and it's like I feel like God, like, I know the pain that that caused me. It's like, if I believe God can have that pain, that just feels like not powerful. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe that's where I'm just like wrong in this, but I'm also not God, so I can't completely understand. But this is really interesting, and I'm gonna think about it more.
Well, I think, I mean, obviously he has like compassion on, and I think that is the root, and maybe it doesn't go in the way that we understand, because I mean, Jesus even forgive them for they do not know. That's like that line where they Jesus wasn't offended by them. It was compassion and love, and not to the point of him being like angry and wounded by Peter denied him. And all the times Jesus weeps, it's out of compassion and love. And I think that is the picture of that. you know us accepting God, not accepting God, how we treat him, how we treat his sacrifice. It's all out of compassion and not out of that. Yeah, like you said, yeah, I agree with you on that. I don't think God like gets wounded by us. I think he's more wounded in the sense that, I don't know, does it say God like is grieved by anything? I'm trying to think,
Well,
because there's lots
I
of
feel
times
like I've
he's
heard it in
angry and upset
church
and
a lot.
sad
Is
about
like
a lot of stuff, but
God like is brokenhearted over the lost, and I don't know if it actually says that anywhere, or if that's just like the language that we use to convey like God's passion for the world like coming to him. But I can't think of any, and maybe we should Google that, of like, yeah, does it say if God is like pained or brokenhearted or grieved? Because I guess what comes to the top of my head is like every time I read the prophets, it feels more, or even like Jesus, and like Jesus is also like a man, and I feel like that's where this gets confusing. But I feel like when God is speaking in the prophets, he is speaking. I can feel that he is speaking above the situation towards the truth, and then putting it in terms that we as humans can understand and relate to. And but I never get that sense that it's like, oh, like you've struck me, and
or
now like
yeah,
I'm
or
trying to
like a
get you back.
spiteful like husband and wife in that sense of, yeah.
It feels more like I think Jesus, yeah, like in the story of the prodigal son, like we don't get a story of a heartbroken father. We get a story of one who is expecting him to come home and who is overjoyed when he does, but we don't get like that.
Yeah.
And I don't, and
And he
obviously,
doesn't confront him and be like, "You ruined my life. Like, how
yeah,
could you do this to your father?"
right. And
Well, you
who
know why?
knows,
Because
like,
that's manipulation, and God doesn't do
yeah.
that kind of thing.
Well, that's interesting that, okay, yeah, you saying that like love as manipulation is not love at all, and we know that, and like God wouldn't do that. And again, I'm not saying that he couldn't be like pained or whatever, but I think when somebody says see how much you've hurt me, and that is usually coming from like an angle of like there can be truth in it obviously, but I feel like that is like stooping down to this place of like not true love, because it's like we want people to love us just because they love us, and obviously we don't want people to hurt us. But I guess in my mind it's a cheaper kind of love to say like, if you love me so much, stop hurting me. And it's like that feels like the backwards way into the door of love, I guess. I don't know. Does that make sense? Of
Right,
like,
yeah.
see how much you've hurt me? Like, stop doing that. And it's like, no, real love is they would just want, love is wanting the best for people, right? And it's like, uh, that's the true path of love. So I don't know.
Well, I think that's like God's feel like he says that a lot where he doesn't say, "See how much I love you, stop hurting me." He goes, "See how much I love you. Why are you still hurting me?" Or like, "Why are you still fighting against?" He doesn't like say it in that way. Um yeah, anyways, it's a good conversation on that idea. What'd you put down? Same
Um,
thing. Just kidding.
yep, same thing. God's brokenheartedness. No, I was in the Proverbs first. I really like that conversation. I was like, we should just keep the episode there. But I'll give like I was like I could just talk about this very shortly. I was reading in Proverbs and it says, "Drive out the mocker, and out goes strife. Quarrels and insults are dead or ended." Um, and I was just thinking about the internet and how the mockers who are everywhere. Then I was also thinking about like, yes, this is true. And I was thinking about the last time I was around a lot of mockers, and it was high school, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like strife and quarrels and insults, high school, middle school, and it's like everybody's insecure. Through that insecurity, we deflect it by pointing out other people's insecurities, and everybody's just having not that great of a time. And I would say even like for myself, where it was like, I think I was well liked in high school. Like I was never bullied, but I can still remember several times where it's like, yeah, somebody said something and that sucked, like mocking, and it's just jokes. And I wrote down, the internet is a high school cafeteria.
Absolutely.
It really is. And so I was just thinking to myself of like, yeah, I need to limit the mockers in my life, of even if they're not mocking me. He just says mockers. It's not those who mock you. It's just people who are fools in that way. And that's what Proverbs calls the mocker, is a fool. And it's like, if people who can't take things for what they are, or have to make fun of things, or have to have the last word. I was just thinking of like comment sections and or internet commentators and all of that stuff. And I was just thinking to myself, it's like, man, I could use less of that, because even though they're not mocking me, I can still feel the quarrels and the insults and the strife. And how I can drive them out is by turning it off. Simply put. So that was like one of my little thoughts, that I was like, there's not a lot of deep points here, but I think we covered the deep points in the marriage between God and man. But yeah,
Yeah.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's obviously wisdom to that, and I think that's where it's like, me and Tori help out with youth group at church, and she's a small group leader for high school girls, and it is just endless revolving drama about. There's never a week that there's no drama, because the second one drama ends, it just appears again about something else, and none of it lasts longer than a week, which is wild, because it's always the biggest, most important thing, and you sound like these people are going to be enemies for a year, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're all good now, and you're just like, what? Or they're like, oh, that doesn't matter anymore, something else happened, and you're just like, how do you like, it's so much, just so much drama and like intensity, and they said this
Strife.
and they said that, and it's literally that, like the quarrels and the whatever, and it just is endless. And I'm just like, I'd be okay living my life without any of that. And I think, yeah, when you said it's like a high school cafeteria, it's exactly right. But I think there's another Proverbs, I don't know the one, but it says, uh banish lies from my lips and liars from my presence. And I just think about that, where I was like, that it feels the same way, where you're just like, get these things out of my life and I'll just have a better life, period. And um yeah, I used to be on Reddit a lot, and it would just, you know 80% of it was good, fun, cool, interesting stuff, but the 20% that was like really negative or disturbing, or someone's take on something, would you have that mental argument with that person even though they're not there. And I could have that physical argument with them if I wanted to, text, messaging on Reddit or something, but it's like, that headspace is just not needed. I don't need to do that. I don't need to go and have we always, like, you see those in movies and TV shows where they go at it with like everything, no hold back, and they just yelling at each other, and it's, or like Gordon Ramsay, and his shit where he's just ripping into people, and you're like, you think that you are that person and you have these great points and you're just going to shut somebody down and be like, yeah, that's what I thought. It never goes that way. Like, and even if it does go that way, 9 times out of 10, you're not actually a person coming from a place of like, a place of love. Absolutely not. A place of evil, even just superiority of like, I know more and I'm smarter than you. And it's like, you think you sound like that, but you don't. And now you're just in the middle of it, swinging away with everybody else. And it's like even with like, it's like, there's a reason you don't argue with like a 3-year-old. It's because they just go around and around and around. And it's just like, yeah. And the same things here. It's like, you don't go down to that level and start, and I think that's where like, we even see that with Jesus, where they throw the most wild, and if 7 brothers and the one, you're like, that would never happen. Like, and Jesus is like, you don't get it. And he just leaves it at that. And he's like, I'm not arguing with you. Like, this is stupid. And yet there are people that bring those things to you and are like, well, technically and you're just like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's great right there. Just like if you can remove those things from your life, there will be a lot more peace in your life. And I think I thankfully don't have friends that I'm like, I don't like how much negative influence they have. How do I break that off? And people that have been that way in my life have, they've grown distant, and I'm okay with that. And yeah, I think it's a tough place when you do have friends that are that and are quarrelsome and bring the strife into your life. But then I'm like, but how much are they friends if that's, you know what I mean? If that's what they're bringing into your life, is it worth it? But no, it's good. I like that. The wisdom.
Yep. I think Proverbs was written for the age of the internet because humankind has always been the same. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, that's good.
All right. Thanks for listening. Subscribe. See you guys tomorrow.
See ya.